My name is Brian Erlich, and I am going to interview my grandmother, Sarah Erlich, a survivor of the Holocaust. I will be asking her questions concerning her life during this period of time. During 1939, when war first broke out, what was your life like?
Well, when the Germans came into Poland, into what they occupied our town, the Shedwowiec, I was, in 1939, I was 13 years old. And I lived with my parents, and I had 4 brothers, and I was the oldest. It wasn't so good. The Germans were terrible to us.
In what ways didn't the Germans treat you well?
Well, first of all, they burned all the synagogues. And we had to stay in the line for a piece of bread. And they took a lot of young people away, and they didn't obey it. Then in 1942, somebody told my grandparents that they're going to take all the teenagers away. So my grandparents was hiding a few teenagers from the block. And I was hiding too. And in the middle of the night, the Nazis came and they knocked at the door, and they broke down the door, and they took us all the teenagers out. And
Where did they take you?
they took us to the school where we used to go. And we were there a whole night. We were laying, all the teenagers from the town were there in the school. We were laying one on top of the other. And in the morning, the next morning, my parents and my grandparents and all the relatives, all the people from town came to the school, and they were standing there and watching. They took us out from the school, and they brought trucks, and they loaded us up on the trucks. We didn't know where they're going to take us, and all the people didn't know either where we're going to wind up.
Where did you wind up?
They took us to a town named Skarżysko. It was a concentration camp and also ammunition factory.
What were your first thoughts as you entered the concentration camp?
We didn't know. We had to go. They made us go to work. 2 shifts, 1 week during the day and 1 week during the night. And they gave us a soup and a piece of bread. The soup was like water. And then they brought in other people from other towns, also to the same camp where we were.
The soup and the piece of bread were all you had all day?
Yes, that's all we had. The people were starving. They got swollen. They were laying on the floor, and they died, a lot of them.
And these were people of all ages?
Mostly young people, but there were people of all ages in the camp where I was.
Things stick out most in your mind during the time in the concentration camps?
Well, we were starving. We had to work. And some people tried to escape, and a lot of them escaped. So they took us out from the barracks. They lined us up, and they just were pointing with the finger. Do this is in German. They took them out, and they shot them in front of us.
These certain people out of the group,
Well, they didn't care. They just pointed with the finger, and they took him out from the line, and they shot him. That's all. But sometimes they hanged him too in front of us. What can I tell you, Brian? It was terrible to go through what I don't wish on anybody.
How long did you stay in this concentration camp?
2 years, from 42 to 44, and then in 44 the Russians started the war with the Germans. So the Germans took us out from this camp and they put us on trucks. We didn't know where they were going to take us. They took a lot of people to other camps, but we wind up in Transtower. It was also a camp, and it was a factory from ammunition. And I was working there, and we also worked 2 shifts, 1 week during the day and 1 week during the night. And when I worked at night, I was very tired because we were starving, a lot of people died from hunger. So I controlled the bullets. And I said to my friends, I want to take a little nap. I couldn't keep my eyes open. And if they see the German come, they should wake me up. But they couldn't. A German came over to me. We were wearing numbers on our neck. They didn't ask for names. And he went like this. And I opened my eyes. I was scared. I said, this is it. He didn't say nothing. He just wrote down the number. And after the work was done in the morning, we worked a night shift. We started to go to the barracks. They took us into a different place in the camp, and 2 women, German women, was beating the women, and 2 men was beating the men. So I had 25 lashes on my behind. I couldn't walk. I went back to the barrack. I couldn't lay. I couldn't walk. But I had to go to work, otherwise they would kill me. And I had a black and blue marks on my behind.
During all your terrible experiences, was there ever a time where you just felt like giving up?
Well, we didn't care yet. We wanted to give up and we thought maybe we'll survive. We were thinking about our parents. We didn't know what happened to them, my brothers, my relatives. But somehow it was a miracle. How we survived, I don't know. But in 1945, the Russians started again the war with the Germans. And the Germans came into the barracks and they asked us to go with them. But a lot of people went with them and they got killed. And a lot of us said, we're not going, we're going to stay here, what will be, will be. And the Russians, they knew that where we were in Transtower was our concentration camp. And they were throwing bombs all around us, but not where we were. We spent a whole night in the barrack. We were dancing and singing. We didn't care yet what would happen. The Germans didn't have time. They prepared trains for us to take us out from the camp and take us someplace else or whatever, or maybe to Auschwitz, to burn us or whatever, but they didn't have a chance. It was late already.
What do you mean it was late already?
It was late for them because they didn't have a chance to take us out from the camp. They took a lot of people out. They took him to Buchenwald, to Auschwitz. But why? Because the Russians were coming. That's why they didn't have a chance. So we stayed a whole night in the camp, and in the morning, we looked out, there were no Germans. So we walked out from the camp and we saw the Russians are coming. They liberated us, the Russians. This was in 1945, January the 16th.
And after you were liberated from the concentration camp, where did you go?
Well, we stayed in Częstochow, and we got together, boys and girls. We didn't have a home. We were homeless. And the Russians told us to go into camp and take some clothes because the Germans had clothes and they had food. So they told us to go and take whatever we wanted. We took it, and we stayed a while in this town. And then we decided to go back home to our town where I was born and to see if somebody survived, because we didn't know.
Who from your family survived?
Nobody. They all got killed. I'm the only one that survived. And I don't know how. It was a miracle.
So you went back to your hometown to see who was left, and nobody was there.
Nobody.
All the pain and suffering that you went through, what message do you have to give?
Well, I wouldn't want this should happen to my children and my grandchildren and to nobody, what we went through. And I hope, I hope to God that this shouldn't happen again. This is it. I can't tell the whole story because I would have to sit a whole year. What I went through, what we went through, but thank God we survived. It was a miracle, and this is it. What else can I say?
This is the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen. The concentration camp my grandmother was in was a work factory, but Bergen-Belsen was a death camp. Most people died in this concentration camp. As you can see, the horrors that went on here. Pictures were taken after the British liberated Bergen-Belsen. This is what the British found. As you can see, there is death everywhere. As my grandmother said, the horrors of the Holocaust should never be forgotten and never be repeated.